Okay, well, again, I am Dave Walsh. I think we'll get started and then people can just join as they log on or get their lunch or whatever. But wanted to welcome you to a joint presentation by the Los Angeles and the Seattle hubs. Today, we're going to be talking about the impacts of embodied carbon beyond the gate. So the life cycle stages A4 and A5. A1 through A3 gets a lot of attention, deservedly so, through EPDs, but that's not the end of the story. So wanted to sort of expand our understanding about that. So we have four great speakers. Luke, who is also a co-organizer of this from the Los Angeles hub, will introduce them just a little bit later. And as I said, this is a joint presentation from both Seattle and Los Angeles. Here you see a few of the folks that are working in both of those regional hubs to put on these presentations. I think that I'm personally pretty excited about this joint presentation because our regions are coming together also on the advocacy and governmental level to address embodied carbon. Just at COP26, the leaders from California, Oregon, Washington, and also British Columbia and Canada made an announcement that their Pacific Coast Collaborative, which is a joint governmental effort, is now going to be putting an extra focus on embodied carbon. So these kinds of regional coming together are increasingly important.
Thanks, Dave. First off, we're going to have a presentation from Sellen Construction. It's going to be by Angi Rivera. She is Director of Sustainability and comes with over 20 years of experience. Angi oversees Sellen's sustainability strategies, and her focus is to bring team members from all members of the team to the table to work collaboratively to develop project-specific sustainability programs in order to meet or exceed client sustainability goals for energy efficiency, waste diversion, and embodied carbon. She's joined by her colleague, Erin Kirkpatrick, who is a sustainability manager, who also has over 11 years of experience. Erin's background's in architecture and waste management. Her expertise is in sharing best practices for waste diversion and promoting healthy materials. As Sellen's carbon champion, Erin also works on innovative tracking mechanisms and procurement strategies for reducing embodied carbon, and somehow found the time in the last year to sew and donate over 200 masks, which is pretty impressive. Then we're going to have a presentation by Emmy LaFountain of Turner Construction. She is Turner's sustainability project manager for Turner, who currently manages their embodied carbon and sustainable wood construction programs. Previously, she also managed the Turner's 2030 commitment, which has aimed to reduce carbon emissions and water consumption on site by over 50% in the next decade. Outside of work, Emmy is a steering committee member of the Sustainable Construction Leaders Group, as well as a founding member of the Bay Area SCL Group, and currently is a master's student at Cambridge. Really impressive resumes here. Lastly, but not least, proud to introduce a friend and colleague in Kathleen Hetrick. Kathleen is an associate at Burrow-Happold, and is also currently in school. She's at Johns Hopkins University, School of Public Health, as a Bloomberg Fellow. Her background is in architectural engineering, and I'm sure you've probably seen her as a strong advocate for healthy materials, as well as embodied carbon reduction. She leads a sustainable design process on a wide range of really cutting edge projects, from LEED, zero carbon, historical adaptive reuse across the board, and is also actively engaged outside of work as a board member of USGB CLA, as well as a founding instigator of this carbon CLF LA group. Truly a force for good, and a great lineup. So with that, I won't waste any more time. I'm going to hand it over to Angie and Erin.
Thanks, Luke, for the introduction. I think Angie is going to get us started off.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Angi Rivera. Yeah, I'm going to get you started, but then I'm going to hand it over to our carbon champion, Erin Kirkpatrick. We just wanted to frame a little bit of this. We can go to the next slide. Just frame our conversation today a little bit. We know we're kind of preaching to the choir, but with the socio-political climate these days, we're continually getting asked questions about this. The general public is demanding this, and now there are certifications trying to define this. And, you know, we all need to compare ourselves to the baseline. What baseline is somewhat in question sometimes. And so we're all working towards that. But I think a bigger picture is, you know, why are we doing this and what sort of impact is this going to make? We all know that buildings contribute to a large percentage of greenhouse gases every year. Next slide. And specifically what, you know, we Sellen and as general contractors, we can control is 11%, which is a huge portion of the carbon emissions every year globally. So we can, you know, make a very concerted effort and have a tangible impact on reducing carbon emissions globally. And there are several different certification schemes out there now being developed. All have different aspects to them. You can change it. You know, going from whether it includes the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, to define and to establish baselines and to compare ourselves against. We are doing a couple of them now, and we've gotten into the A4, A5 tracking, as you'll hear Erin get into more detail about how we've gone about trying to quantify this on projects. And it's a very detailed process that we are, you know, continually refining in our day-to-day work. Erin?
Yeah, thanks, Angie. We have a little bit more background info. I think I can kind of breeze through it for this group, but I didn't really want to not touch on it at all because I think it's really important that, you know, I think so we're looking at just the A4, A5 stage of the life cycle right now for this discussion. I think to Dave's point earlier in the intro, there has been a lot of attention and work around the A1 to A3 stage, rightfully so, but as general contractors, our sometimes kind of only lever or our biggest area of impact is going to be on the stuff that we can directly control, which is really going to be on that A5 life cycle stage. You know, as general contractors, we don't have, especially if it's not design build, we don't have any impact on materiality. We don't have a lot of impact on design stuff, of course. So this is sort of our largest area of opportunity. And not only that, but it really contributes to this huge blip that you're going to see in a building's life cycle stage or its, you know, useful life, where we're trying to have a meaningful impact on the front end. This is where we're really able to contribute to that. So the urgency, of course, of addressing embodied carbon is that is where you're going to see the entire building's impact is, you know, during our, at the beginning stages. So, and there's, you know, I think that like most people on this call really understand that there's opportunities to reduce upon operational carbon over time, but that embodied carbon piece, the piece that we have impact over at the beginning, that's sort of static. That's a fact, right? It happens at the beginning, and that is going to be the case for the entire building's life, right? So that is sort of part of the urgency that we're trying to address with this. I think that people have probably seen this graph too on the left and understand with a lot of the work that Architecture 2030 has been doing that 2030 is a really pivotal point. This red line on the left is the 1.5 degree rise in temperature. And if we continue with business as usual, which is the orange line trending up, we are going to end up hitting that point, which is in the scientific community, kind of the point of no return in terms of climate impacts and irreversible destruction. So where we're able to have the biggest impact is going to be on this front end at the embodied carbon section. So that's part of the urgency and where we're going to be able to have the most influence and impact. Okay, so here's where it gets kind of interesting. For A4, A5, the actual emissions are separated out into scopes. We've got scope 1, 2, and 3. Scope 1 is direct impact or direct emissions associated with like company cars, fleet equipment, or company fleet equipment, construction equipment, which is both owned and rented, anything that is sort of working on the job site, generators, utility use. Scope 2 also includes like utilities, electric, associated with like job site offices directly supporting those projects, and any other sort of fossil fuel combustion that's associated with that project. Scope 3 emissions really covers a lot of, I think when you're looking at like corporate accounting, that's what a lot of scope 3 includes, but it also includes, you can see on the third bullet point there, manufacturing of building materials to transport those materials to the site. I do want to mention that I think that this graph or this image looks sort of static and looks like a fact, but in actuality, what is included in each scope and what's included in this carbon accounting for A4, A5 for the different certification programs is actually a little bit up in the air. I had a conversation with another one of our panelists earlier in the week where it sounds like Sellen is doing a slightly different accounting of the scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions than another GC is. Not all certification programs actually agree on what's included in the different scopes. So know that there's a lot of this information floating around. And I think there's still some reasoning that is going into it in what's in each scope and what specifically we should be counting towards specific projects and their emissions. Okay, so for the data collection, this is sort of the meat and potatoes of the stuff that I wanted to talk to you guys about today. This is really kind of in its infancy in the industry, I think. And we, Sellen, are actually just getting started on it in the last 2 years. We started to collect information on one project in particular. And so to Angie's point about like, why are we doing this? We are very much in sort of the baselining stage of doing this work, collecting the information, and hopefully along the project's path, we can really make some informed decisions about how to make a real impact. But the first step, obviously, is to collect the information. And what it is we're collecting is information on A4, that's again, material transport, that's product delivery from whatever that last leg is. So if a material is coming from a distributor in Texas to Seattle, we're counting that round trip distance for that A4 factor. Nothing else. If something had to go to Spain to get to Texas, and then from Texas to us, we're still for A4 only counting that last leg. The other emissions hopefully are captured in the environmental product declaration for the A1 to A3 stages. So we're picking up where it left off. And then the other information we're collecting around A5 is construction activity related information. That's really scope 1 and 2. That's company cars traveling to the job site for that specific project. If it, there's other, like if somebody has a corporate vehicle, we're really only tracking information that goes to and from that project for this project work. Oh, whoops, sorry. Construction equipment, any equipment related with construction activities, forklifts, power tools, whatever, or, combustion tools, generators, that kind of stuff. And then natural gas and electricity use. So this pie chart is actually from one of our actual projects. You can see a little bit of the distribution of the information that we've been collecting. There's some more slides that gets into this a little bit in more detail. I think first and foremost, how you start collecting this data now that you know that what we need to collect is really getting this into contractual information and bid documents. Because this is definitely new in the industry, we have found in our work that there has been a lot of initial pushback from subcontractors that don't necessarily understand how much work is going to be involved with reporting this information, what their time commitment looks like. Very initially, I think on the project that we started doing this on, we got hit with some really large change orders of, and I'm like an order of like 6-figure magnitude change orders that we were like, no, calm down. Like these are the things that we're doing. We're going to help you along the way. It's not as much work as you expect. And so with that sort of nervousness or anxiety around this issue, I think it's really important to be clear about what you're asking for and do it up front. So it's also something that you can't do sort of midstream. We've had other clients after projects have already got started asked like, okay, well, what about like, we're kind of interested in doing this. What do you think? And the answer has been very clearly like, the ship has sailed and we cannot do this because of these reasons. We need to be able to outline this as a contract requirement. So this is just an example of some of the things that we're asking for in the project documents. This is a copy of the actual log. We will provide like a log to subcontractors where they can fill out their information about all the tools and equipment they're using. And then they're reporting it to us on a monthly basis. This is a one-time form that they fill out for the actual equipment. But then on a monthly basis, they have been reporting their actual fuel usage and that kind of stuff, the different equipment that they are using at a certain period of time in the job for that month. We're collecting information about all of their equipment, tools, any off-road vehicles, all of their combustion tools. So that includes diesel, gas, and propane in gallons. We need all that information. The types of vehicles that it might be delivering materials. So we're getting mileage on those vehicles for their job site deliveries, but we also need to distinguish by the types of vehicles. So cars, minivans, up to heavy duty trucks. Also like mid-size stuff. So there are kind of 3 tiers of the vehicle sizes: small, medium, large, because there's different conversion factors based on those different vehicles. And then we're also looking for the company-owned commuting information, again, just to the job site, and then all of the electrical or utility information. So electricity, natural gas, that's sort of on us. So we have the subcontractor submissions that we get monthly, but then we're also collecting information on our utilities and any of our self-perform work as well, and putting it into the dashboard that we're collecting all the information on. So we get this information monthly. We then on the back end are actually converting all this information into GHG, into greenhouse gas emissions, so that we can create this dashboard that has the information on all of that data, right? So this is an aggregate of what we have for the project that we are doing this on currently. You can see there's obviously a couple of different ways that we can graph this. We can also analyze it by, you can see on the right, like year, quarter, month, day. If you want to analyze it by month, you can do that. If you want to look at the overall totals, you can do that. And of course, as you get more information over time, you can see sort of how those pieces of the pie are really shaping up and what some of the biggest sort of offenders might be, and really where your focus can be. I think that like a lot of people try to focus on like commuting, just as an example, because maybe they feel like they can have more control over that. Or more impact, but you can see that that's a pretty small slice of the pie. So it's not really until you start collecting this data that you can see like, okay, maybe our focus should be elsewhere, maybe our focus should be here. So this is sort of what it looks like when you start to do this work. And it's kind of interesting to see the different spikes on the bottom chart on the right. I think once you end up getting more data, you can start really charting this like with the project schedule and see what it is, and hopefully do some forecasting in the future. But this is what our dashboard looks like for the data we've started to collect. You can also, not only can you separate it by time and maybe do some comparisons to the schedule, but you can also analyze by subcontractor. We actually have all this information on the right redacted for our project, but I think I'm comfortable saying the bar chart on the top is actually our electrical use. That's actually us and our self-perform work. So you can see we actually have a lot of opportunity potentially to make a real impact on the work that we're doing. You can also analyze the data by the scope of work. So you can see that excavation is going to be a really big piece of the pie. Electricity is a really big piece of the pie. And then down from there. But there's different ways once you start collecting all of this that you can really take a look at what's actually going on your job site. So that work that we're doing is really like not necessarily proprietary, but we're doing all of the information collecting and then calculating in our own systems just through spreadsheets and determining the factors, conversion factors. But there have been a lot of new software tools that are coming out that will help you do this work. A lot of people on this call obviously have familiarity with EC3. EC3 is putting out functionality for tracking A4, where we can put in that delivery mileage for different materials. OneClickLCA has the same thing. Green Badger is launching like a whole job site sustainability portal that will allow for carbon tracking, but also like waste and energy and even like some job site reporting if you wanted to do that. So a lot of these things are launching right now. I have some examples of what it looks like from OneClickLCA. So, and this is very similar to EC3 or any of the programs really, where you have bill of materials entry to track A4. So this is obviously only one little line item here, but you see concrete, you can enter in your quantity, but then it also has a box to enter transport by the truck type or the delivery type, and also the mileage. So that's how these programs are putting in the functionality for A4 tracking. For A5, this again is from OneClickLCA. You can put in your consumption information from your utilities. So selecting for your actual region. So I put in Washington here. You can put in the quantity. You're really pulling this information from invoices. It's very similar to the data that I showed you before. This is just OneClickLCA is really asking you for the information and then doing the conversions for you. Same thing for fuel, diesel use, that kind of stuff. So you're still collecting the same information, just how you choose to sort it and calculate it depends on you and your company and the programs you would like to use and that kind of stuff. We have a couple of job site technologies, I think, that are making this work easier as well. One of them I just wanted to talk about today was electronic ticketing for concrete. I think there are very clearly like a lot of advantages to moving to electronic ticketing. But for A4, A5, we can see like actual job arrival times, idling times, mileage, where the different plants, the mixes are coming from. We can get that information in real time and export it to Excel and import it to Power BI if we want to include that with our actual tracker. So we're getting up-to-date information instead of chasing down all the different parties that might have the information, getting, you know, scanned tickets and all of that kind of stuff. This is really helping, I think, a lot moving into the digital age of getting this information and aggregating all that data. If you don't want to end up going with one of the programs like OneClick or EC3, there are some tools to figure out the facts and figures of what it is you're calculating. The EPA.gov website has tools where you can see equivalencies, but it will also convert information. Although you can see the different metrics on the left, will convert the information to metric tons. They're on the right. But you can also click that "How are they calculated" link, and it will show you the backend calculation of the different metrics. So if you want to end up building something for yourself, you certainly can. there's information out there for you. And then just really quickly, a couple of takeaways. I spent a lot of time talking about this, but the fossil fuel tracking really needs to be written into contract exhibits. I think it's the best way to establish your expectations and avoid change orders and really establish what it is you're trying to do up front. And then I think the other thing I want to mention really quickly is that A4, A5 tracking really requires significant budget allocation and time from those working on your projects. We have found that we have to, like, we're talking dedicating at least like a half-time FTE or even full-time for projects of somebody collecting and aggregating this data and really making sure it's up to date. So there is significant involvement on the budget side. So that's another reason why projects can't really walk into it late. We need to be establishing our own budgets that have allocations for this at the front end. And then I think finally, establishing those baselines will really allow us to make further reductions down the road. So hopefully figuring out what it is we're looking at with this data will help us move towards other policies like the anti-idling policies that we have on sites now, requiring tiered equipment use for our subcontractors. I think one of the reasons we got pulled in is because we might be using renewable diesel for our waste hauling on one of these projects. And we'll really be able to see a really clear before and after picture. We're just not there yet. But you know, only through collecting this data will we be able to make those comparisons.